Hello everybody, my name is Mikkel Barslund and I'm a research fellow at the Center for European Policy Studies in Brussels, where I'm working on economic policy and social policy issues. And I've recently written about youth unemployment in Europe, which is what I'm going to speak about today. As some of you might remember, youth unemployment was very high on the EU agenda back in the spring, leading up to the EU summit in late June, where a number of measures were taken at the European level. I'll come back to those measures later, but first I would like to focus on some key elements which I think are often missing from the debate on youth unemployment, and I hope you will enjoy the talk. The first thing I would like to focus on is really the meaning on youth unemployment rates. You often hear in the media that more than 50% of Greek and Spanish youth are unemployed. And that refers to the youth unemployment rates being in excess of 50%. I think in Greece it's 60% and in Spain it's also around 60%. But as we know, that doesn't mean that more than half of young people in Spain and Greece are without work. The youth unemployment rate is as the normal unemployment rate, defined as the number of people unemployed out of people in the labor force. So actually out of people who are looking for work or are employed. But these numbers are fairly misleading when it comes to the age group of 15 to 24-year-olds. First of all, for the teenagers, the 15 to 19-year-olds, many of those are not in the labor force. They're in school as they should be. So very few people in the age category 15 to 19-year-olds are actually looking for work. So that means that a tiny few people unemployed in this category makes for a very high unemployment rate. The same is to some extent the case for the 20 to 24-year-olds. There are more people there in the labor force who are looking for work, but still many people go to university or are still in education. So the youth unemployment rate is actually quite misleading as to how difficult the situation is for youth. So in this case, it makes more sense to look at the youth unemployment ratio, which is defined as the number of unemployed young over the total population of young people. And it still paints a fairly bleak picture, but it's not in the range of 50% of all young people without jobs. The youth unemployment ratio is related to another concept you might have heard about, the NEETs concept, which stands for the not in employment, education or training. This is very comparable to the youth unemployment ratio, except that the NEETs will also take into account these young people who are not actually looking for a job, but may have given up, may stay at home, may have withdrawn. So the NEETs ratio, the number of NEETs out of total population, tends to be higher, but it's very related to the youth unemployment ratio. Another thing I think it's worth mentioning here in the beginning is that the young people are not the only ones unemployed. In fact, in many countries where youth unemployment rates are very high, in Greece, Spain and Portugal, the total unemployment rate is also very high. So that means that many people above the age of 24 are unemployed. So it's not a given thing that it makes sense to have special measures for the young unemployed when actually many more people above the age of 24 or above the age of 30 are also without a job. So I think that's very important to keep in mind before we start out on the discussion on youth unemployment. So the main message I would like to convey with this is really that one has to be very careful when using the youth unemployment rate, because the labor force for this particular age group, 15 to 24-year-olds, is very small. A better number to use is the youth unemployment ratio, where you take the unemployed over the total population of 15 to 24-year-olds. And that's related to the concept of the needs, the not in education, employment or training, which is a broader measure, also taking into account that some people are not looking for job, not registered as unemployed, and therefore not covered by the unemployment ratio, but they would be covered under the needs definition. So that's really my key message for this first part on youth unemployment. I would like to continue by discussing a term which has been used a lot in connection with youth unemployment, namely that of a lost generation or scarred generation. Many of you might have heard speeches or newspaper articles where it's said that we are in danger of losing a young generation into unemployment, or we have a generation which will be scarred by unemployment. And surely the term lost generation or scarred generation, that's a very powerful term to use, and it's clear if you hear it, you really want to do something. And this term lost generation refers to a literature which finds an association between being unemployed in early years and a lot of negative outcomes later on. For example, unemployment later on, many other bad health later on. There's a fairly large literature on this. And this is really what gives rise to this notion of a lost generation or scarred generation. I would like to point to 3 issues with this term and with this literature on lost generation and scarring. And the first one is probably a fairly controversial view. But in my view, what we see in this literature is that we see an association between being unemployed when you're young and what's going to happen in later life. And I deliberately say association because I would like to make a distinction between a correlation and what is causation. And what do I mean by that? I mean that you're likely to observe, if you observe an individual who is unemployed when young, and you take the same group of individuals, some were unemployed when young, and some had jobs when they were young, and you look at them, say, 10 years later, there's likely to be a correlation between those who were unemployed when young and who are unemployed later. Simply because the labor market works in a way that somehow these people who were unemployed when they were young, they had different characteristics than those who got employment on average. For example, it's likely that people who got employment just after graduation had more intrinsic motivation, they were maybe more assertive, they had skills which were important in the labor market, therefore they became employed, whereas those which became unemployed just after graduation were more likely not to have these skills. That doesn't mean that everyone who's unemployed doesn't have the right skill. It just means that on average you would expect that young people who are unemployed would have what you could say worse skills than those who are employed at any given point of time. Therefore, when you look 10 years later, you would be likely to find that these people who were employed as young are more likely also to be employed 10 years later, simply because they have some skills. Could be intrinsic motivation, it could be assertiveness, it could be also other skills which are important in the labor market. So there's nothing controversial in seeing that if you're unemployed when you're young, then you're also more likely to be unemployed when you're older. That's how it should be in a competitive labor market. What we have to look at is whether there's a lot of causation, namely saying that whether if you're unemployed when young, is that likely to cause you to be more unemployed when you're older, given the same set of skills? And that's a much more difficult question to answer. And it's not clear to me that the literature answers this definitively, meaning that it's not clear to me that it's proven that there is a very strong association between as a very strong causal effect from being unemployed when young to be unemployed later on. The second issue I would like to raise in relation to the term lost generation is probably a minor one, and it's one you find often in academic publishing, namely one of publication bias. And by that I mean that it's very difficult to get studies published which do not have a result, which don't show a result. That means that if you do a study, try to look for scarring effects for youth, for young people who are unemployed, and you don't find it in the data you're looking at, then it's very difficult to get it published. And there's probably quite a few of those studies which, when you're reading the literature, they're simply missing because they're still lying in the drawer. They couldn't be published. So when you go through the literature on scarring, on a lost generation, you're likely to get an overvalue of this term. You're likely to get a slightly skewed picture of the results because you simply miss these studies which couldn't find a result and which therefore couldn't be published. While this is probably a minor issue, I still think it deserves mentioning here. The third issue I would like to raise relating to the term lost generation is also the most important one. We are in a situation where in some countries overall unemployment is really high. In such a situation, it's not enough to show that unemployment is detrimental to one generation or one cohort. The real question you have to ask is actually which generations are most lost or most scarred by unemployment. It might be that the young generation, the 15 to 24-year-olds, might be that they're scarred by early experiences of youth unemployment. But we also have to look at what happened to the 40-year-old who gets unemployment. How is he scarred? What is the effect on his situation, his family? Unfortunately, very few studies look into this. So this is really a missing piece, this comparison between a potential scarring effect of the young cohort, the 15 to 24-year-olds, and the scarring effect which might occur to later generations. We have to remember that young people are often much more mobile, or have the potential to be much more mobile, because the fixed cost of moving for people who hasn't got family it's much lower than for people with family. I mean, if you have children who goes to school, they would have to change school, they would have to find new friends. If you have a spouse, a wife or a man, he or she would also need to find a job if you have to move. So it's much more costly when you are settled down with family to move. You might also have to sell your house or find another one to rent. So it's very unclear that even if there's a scarring effect for young people, say 15 to 25 to 24 or 20 to 29-year-old, it's not at all clear that we have to do something for this generation. Now, there might be an older generation which is much more hit, and it's actually this generation we have to do something for. And that's why I think it's dangerous to use a very strong term such as lost generation for just one generation. The real question we have to ask is really which generation is suffering the most, and if we want to do something, we should actually do something for this generation and not just focusing on the young cohort. I would now like to turn to the issue of what can be done about youth unemployment. And naturally, as we would expect, quick solutions are in very short supply. A general macroeconomic recovery would bring youth unemployed rates down, but let's think about what can be done immediately. And I don't have very firm answers to that, but I have a framework which I think is useful in terms of thinking about what would work. And to start out thinking about this, I would like to step back to before the crisis, let's say 2007. Let's have a look at youth unemployment rates in Southern European countries, in Spain, in Greece, in Portugal, in France, in Italy. And what were they like? They were about 20%, a bit below for some countries, a bit higher for some other countries. But this was actually after a number of boom years. Let's take Spain as an example, which had very close to 20% youth unemployment. And this was at the same time there were a lot of low-skilled people in the building sector. But even then, the youth unemployment rate was quite high at 20%. And if we go a bit further back into the 90s, we see youth unemployment rates in several of these countries of around 30%. So this is not a new problem. This is something which has been there for decades. And this suggests that this is a structural problem. It's something with the institutions, with the education institutions, with the labor market institutions, and it's not something which can be easily fixed. There's probably a more long-term solution probably requires a reform of the education system, of the labor market, to make sure that the transition from school and from education to work is made easier. So these are difficult reforms to do. What is also important to realize that this is not some new knowledge that we have come upon during the crisis. This is something that has been debated back in the 90s. We also said we needed these reforms to education system, to labor market, but nothing really happened. So the fact that nothing has happened in all those years is probably a testament to how difficult it is to do and how ingrained these things are in institutions. And to change this, you really need broad support within the country, from social partners, from employers' organizations, from trade unions, teachers' unions, and education institutions. This is not something which you can easily fix, saying, well, why don't we do a German-style model of vocational training? The German-style model of vocational training might work, but it has to come from within the country itself. The German-style vocational training model with apprenticeships would have to be accepted by trade unions, would have to be accepted by employer organizations. And this is just not something which is easy to do. Given this, I think there's reason to be skeptical about the effect of EU initiatives such as for example, the Youth Guarantee. The Youth Guarantee guarantees every young person, I think up to the age of 25, either further education, employment, or a quality traineeship within 4 months of being unemployed. But few of these countries where this is relevant, Spain, Italy, Greece, Portugal, have any effective tradition for supplying good quality apprenticeships. Actually, the Commission acknowledges that there are often quality problems with apprenticeships. Already existing traineeships are usually of bad quality. So it's very difficult to see how this Youth Guarantee will be implemented in practice. How will these high quality apprenticeships come about when there's no firm tradition for delivering it from companies? Promising employment in the current situation is very vague. I mean, there's very little employment, and of course you can't get youth unemployed if you give sufficiently high subsidy, but then you're likely to push out other workers, and this might not be a very good idea. So I'm very skeptical about what, for example, the Youth Guarantee will deliver. As part of their measures to combat youth unemployment, the Commission is also working with member states to try to improve educational system. This is being done under what is called the open method of coordination, where member countries are learning from each other and employing best practices. And this is very sensible measures, and the Commission is very well placed to do exactly this job, You just have to realize that these are not short-term fixes. This will have very little effect in the short term. It might be the right way in the long term if education system and labor market institutions can be reformed in the right way, which fits the individual countries. But this is not something which will bring relief in the coming year or the coming couple of years. This is really long-term measures, and again, they will have to be accepted by social partners in each country. So I think the message really to take away from this is that there's not a lot of you can do in the very short term. Really, we need macroeconomic recovery. And also, and the other message I would like to convey is that one has to be skeptical of fixes which sound very easy to do, or which are good sounding, such as, for example, let's export the German model of vocational training. Again, it might be a very good idea, but it's not something which is very easy to do. And it's not something which will help next year, for example. This is a long process which would have to be negotiated in each country. How can it best be implemented to fit existing structures? How should existing structures be changed in order to facilitate better vocational training, better learning on the job, better apprenticeship opportunities? And this is not something which will affect youth unemployment rates for the next coming years. It's a bit of a negative message, but I think it's important to bring out. I would like to end this lecture on a more positive note than I have taken so far, and I'll do this by highlighting an issue which I think has received too little attention in the crisis, namely the one of encouraging labor mobility. And with labor mobility, I'm focusing on intra-EU mobility. It's an issue which the Commission is looking into via the EURES portal, the portal where jobs from all over Europe are advertised, and you can place your CV and hope to find a job within the EU. But it has been underutilized so far, and I think the Commission could do more in this respect. So before I go on, let's just briefly review the situation in Europe with respect to labor market and macroeconomic. We have a situation in Northern Europe, especially in Germany, but also in Austria, to some extent in Denmark, where labor markets are quite tight. There are reports of shortages of people in some occupations. And at the same time, we have the well-known situation in the south of Europe, where labor markets are not tight at all. Youth unemployment rates are very high. This is combined with what I've spoken about earlier, that you would expect most young people to be quite mobile, at least in the short term, because they haven't yet made a family. So they would have the option to move for a job if a job was available. Labor mobility from Southern European countries will help to relieve pressure on social services, which will ease financial strain in these countries. These young people are not utilizing their skills, so if they could be made to utilize these skills in the north of Europe, in Germany, in Austria, or some other countries, then they would make a valuable contribution to these countries. So this is at least in the short term very much a win-win situation. If you are able to match up workers in the south with the skills needed in the north and have them to move there. What is the evidence so far on labor mobility? There has been an increase in the number of people from Spain, from Greece, Italy, Portugal coming into Germany, but the numbers are very low. And I think there is a big scope for increasing these numbers, and it would be very interesting to look into what is actually holding these numbers back, so to speak. I mean, we're now 5 years into a crisis. In Spain, there's been very high youth unemployment rates for the last 4 or 5 years. So it cannot any longer be that people are just waiting for better times. So this is one issue which should be explored in more detail, and hopefully the Commission will really revamp the EURES services and make better use of that. Are there any problems related to this? And you will often hear people talk about a brain drain. Now very good, very well educated from the south, which has had a costly education in the south, will now go north to work. My answer to this is that this might be an issue in the longer term. In the short term, we really have a number of skilled people who would like to put their skills to use. They are not being used where they are, and if they can use the skills in another country, they should do so. That will be beneficial for everybody. In the longer term, there might be the issue if many Spanish people, say, move to Germany and they don't come back. There could of course be an issue in the longer term as how to finance the Spanish welfare states, the pension systems. But that's really for the longer term. The evidence is really that people tend to go back to their countries when economic prospects betters. So I think we have to put the brain drain issue aside for now, and instead focus on how can we make life better for individuals whose skills are in demand in another country, and who are willing to relocate. Of course, this is not something which should be forced on people. This is about informing people that jobs are available in another country, something which can be very difficult to find out, and then they can make an individual choice whether they want to go there to work or not. And I think there are some very fine prospects in finding policies which can enhance labor mobility. So I hope the Commission will be successful in this respect, and this can somehow bring relief to those many young unemployed people. Of course, this is not a cure-all. I mean, in Spain there's close to 1 million young unemployed people, and they will not all of them be able to find work abroad. But this is something which, for some individuals, really could be a blessing. So let's hope something comes out of that.